Oh, hi there, everyone. Uh, Today I wanted to talk about the minimum wage in British Columbia. It's not changed by very much. Um, it's 11:35, as many of you will know. Uh, Other places in Canada have increased a little bit higher, such as Alberta and Ontario. Why those places have gone up. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked into it. I don't live there, and I've never actually been to either of those places, so it's not of much concern to me. And I'm never making minimum wage again, so those are all factors. Um, because I mean, with Alberta, I thought, for the longest time, I just had the impression in my head that nobody wanted to live there because their winters are so cold. And I always heard about these, stories of how the women were always leaving Alberta, and, moving to places like Vancouver or, Toronto or Montreal or whatever. That's what I heard, but I just looked at a census, and then evidently their population has increased since 2011. Not by a lot, but it has. Um, anyway, I've got a really unpopular opinion, but I'm going to explain why I have this opinion. And although my opinion to some people is going to sound dickish, there's solid reason for why I have it. I don't think the minimum wage should increase in BC anytime soon of any significant stature. Um, because people are under the impression that if the minimum wage is increased, the living standard of everyone will improve. Well, that's not true. It would only be in keeping up with inflation, and it would be their opportunity to increase the price of just about everything and and get away with it. Uh, you may have noticed when you watch wage increases on the television, it's not really being presented as, uh, good, something good. It just isn't. It's being presented as something that's happening, this, that, and the other, but really it's in keeping with inflation. So, okay, it's nice for some, snot-nosed teenager fresh out of college, or wherever, to go get a job real quick as a barista at Starbucks or wherever, working a fresh slice, I don't know. Um, and in theory, be making 15 bucks an hour and being able to spend money and live better, but that's not in reality. Uh, Price for rental units is going up, and with a minimum wage of $15, it'll only go up even higher. Uh, it's an opinion of mine that should the minimum wage get to that point, the $15 won't be worth as much as 11.35 is today. Uh, because of the price of everything going up. And the reason I disagree with minimum wage going up is I've got a bit of bias. Like, I worked for minimum wage or near minimum wage for a number of years, and I climbed the walls, and now I make, a decent amount of money, and the minimum wage being increased to $15 an hour, uh, still pales in comparison how much money I make, but it still would make my money worth less because prices of everything else will go up, and it won't benefit me at all. And my employers will not pay me more money because the minimum wage got increased. They'll look at it as, well, you're making more than the minimum wage as it is. We don't have to do anything for you. And that, would I wouldn't consider that being fair, because why should some, 20, 22-year-old, whatever, punk just moved out of their parents' place to rent a place of their own so they can probably bang their chick in peace and quiet? Uh, why should they, jump right to 15 and that $15 be worth as much as $15 is today. Uh, because when I moved out, that's not what it was. I was the minimum wage when I moved out was 8.75, I believe, or something around that ballpark. And I was making a little bit more than that, but it's pretty shitty living. Like basically, you have enough for rent, you have enough for internet and cable. At least I did. Basic food, just regular stuff. Vegetables, a lot of rice, a lot of potatoes, and a little bit of meat, and that's about it. Nothing too fancy, and you have enough money to drink really cheap booze every day. That's what minimum wage and renting was like for me. You can rent a little bit cheaper if you have roommates. You can get a little bit better place. But if you truly want your own rental space, it's gonna cost a little bit more if you want anything that's even remotely decent. I mean, my place was expensive for what it was, and I wasn't happy there. Um, yeah, not gonna get into details that much. I haven't heard, but it's I'm sure it has gone up in 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 rental fees since I was renting, which was a number of years ago. I've got some buddies who tell me that the places they're renting, they're paying probably a third more than I was, and it's basically the same kind of place. It might be a floor up, or it may have, one small room with it or something, but essentially it's the same sort of thing. Like old building, um, usually ground level, kind of shitty, and that's it. So, this this undeveloped thought that if the minimum wage goes up, everyone's going to have more money. If that money isn't worth as much, then you don't have more money. It's a simple concept. And, I don't feel like having my money being downgraded just because, people who either want an easy job, have no inhibition to, you know, uh, have no aspiration to do better, uh, to even if they're just climbing the walls like I was, um, slowly but surely getting to a better place, if they're just content with any old job and it meets their criteria, usually because it's lazy, it's easy, it's not complicated, it's what they're used to, and they just have no drive to do any better. That's the thing about a capitalist society is that there is money to be made. You have to, you gotta go for it. You gotta make an attempt. You can't just get into a routine and have no interest of doing better, because then you will be stuck at a minimum wage job and you'll never be able to afford the better things in life. And to say, well, I don't have any inhibition, I don't have any aspirations, I just want to make more money doing my simple job. Um, why should they get more money? I mean, this is a first world country we live in, sure, but we're far from the age of the Jetsons where everything's, convenient and everything's, self-automated and everything's perfect. Far from that. And in this world, there is competition for resources of all kinds, whether it be food, shelter, all those sort of places. And, there are lazy people out there who, inherit this sort of stuff, and it's easier for them. They have an advantage over other people. That's just a thing that people are going to have to accept. But for people to say, I'm not going to work harder or I'm not going to think smarter, I just want things to be better for me right now. Um, that's not how the world works. And throughout the Earth's history with, species, not just humans, but all species that have come and gone, they've had to work for what they wanted. And if they wanted things to be better for themselves, they had to work for it. And if you don't have the advantage of just having rich parents or whatever, um, that's not a disadvantage for you. That was just an advantage somebody else had, and that's why they were able to prosper. The fact that if you're able-bodied and you're young and you're not completely stupid, it's totally up to you if you want to make more money or not. And there are jobs out there like you can work for a moving company and make 15 bucks an hour. Now, I'm not going to say that they're the most polite people to work with usually, or that it's easy work, but you can quite easily. You look in the newspaper for help wanted things, and there will be a moving company, for example, that you can go work for 14, 15 bucks an hour. You don't have to make minimum wage. But a lot of people, they can't do it, or they're lazy, or they just have no drive, and they pick simple rudimentary job that any idiot can do, and they go, "This is unfair. I'm not going to do anything to make things better for myself. I expect the government to come in and make things better for me." And some of them have this. Some people have this mentality that so long as things are better for me, it doesn't matter if it makes things not so good for other people. When I was saying about how much money won't be worth the same if the minimum wage increases. Um, they got that mentality. So when they have that mentality, uh, a person like me looking down or looking at them, shouldn't have said looking down, but you know what I mean, looking at it going, this person doesn't have a problem with my money being worth less if it betters their situation. They're a capitalist. They're just a poor capitalist. Uh, that you know, it would be the same thing if they were in my position. They'd have like a similar opinion as me, except they would be even bigger dicks about it. As it were, they're at the disadvantage because they didn't climb the walls. They had no aspiration to do better. And I mean, I don't enjoy the thought of this video. I'm just saying, like, I had to work to get where I am, and I don't want my money to be worth less because uh, people who don't want to try want to make more money doing a simple job. I mean, it's slightly a dickish thing, but it's not the worst opinion out there. Uh, I mean, if I was a person making minimum wage and I heard somebody making a video like this, yes, I'd be irritated with them. Yes, I wouldn't like them. But that's not the way it is, and it would be a narrow-minded opinion. Because now that I've made a bit more money, um, you remember the times when you were at minimum wage and you go, that's not happening to me again, and I will do what it takes to not be in that situation again, whether it means going back to school, getting training for something, going for a different type of job, whatever. You just, you can't be satisfied with, getting the simplest, easy job and just going, uh, oh God, pay me more money and, expect it to happen. Because it doesn't work that way. Santa Claus came and went. Christmas was over a month ago. And if you want a higher wage, you could move to Alberta. Housing's fairly cheap there from what I've read. You can move to Ontario, where housing is not so cheap. I'm sure there's a catch with everything, and that was with my point with why the news isn't really reporting this as good news. The minimum wage increasing, it's just because it's really just keeping up with inflation, and um, you know, proportionally, it'll mean that there's less money around because all those people who are making somewhat decent wages, their money won't be worth as much. The people who think they're making more money at minimum will actually be making probably around about the same. So it's actually just overall bad news for everybody. I don't care how much money you make, because if everything's keeping up with inflation, you know, even doctors, high paid lawyers, all those people, they only make X amount of dollars. And you take asparagus, for example. What if the normal for asparagus becomes $20 a pound? What if that becomes the normal? That affects you on everybody, everybody. It doesn't matter what job you do, it affects you. It becomes like an expensive thing to buy asparagus. People are outraged with asparagus when it's $11 a pound. And that's just one example. Um, and, most jobs will not increase just because, increase in pay just because the minimum wage increased. Like almost no jobs in my imagination, because nobody, no company's gonna, or organization or whatever, is gonna want to compensate for the terms you agreed to for working that job, and the pay that the company's at, to compensate for the minimum wage increase. Like no employer is going to want to do that. They're going to be like, you agreed to work for this wage. It's not minimum wage. Therefore, tough, take it. I mean, I suppose if you had a really good union or Teamsters or whatever, maybe you could get a better deal, but not likely. And I mean, yeah, minimum wage, it sucks. I live, as I said, on my own, a minimum wage, and I was getting by, but not comfortably. And it can be done. It just means that, you ain't got nothing fancy. That's what it means. I remember, buying my computer, and a friend of mine built it for me, and at the time, it took months to be able to save for it, and it wasn't a fancy computer. Like the video graphics card was integrated with the motherboard, so it's like, well, it can basically play some games, but it's not fancy, and that's what minimum wage is. It's nothing fancy, and nor should it be, because you should have that ability to go, I want to do better. I can do better, and yeah, because if you don't have that ability, then you know, just you're you're not contributing or producing anything of any significance. You're just um, casually going through things, and you know, not really getting anything particularly. I'm not wording this good, but you're not getting anything accomplished, in my opinion. So anyway, yeah, I guess I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.